Have you ever felt that terrifying moment when you call for help and no one comes? Tonight, we're diving into 3 disturbing true stories where the one thing more horrifying than what was happening was realizing the police couldn't or wouldn't help. These aren't just urban legends. These are stories where people were pushed to the brink, stalked by forces no one else believed, and left completely alone when the system failed them. In Story 1, a woman moves into a charming old duplex and discovers a sealed-off basement no one wants to talk about. Strange noises start under her floor. Something knocks from behind the wall, and when the police show up, they hear it too, but leave anyway. What she finds when she finally opens the door will haunt you. In Story 2, a woman escapes her abusive ex until she starts seeing him again. But something's wrong with his face. Something isn't human. And when she begs for help, all she hears is, "There's nothing we can do until he breaks the law." By the time they act, someone's already wearing her skin. And in Story 3, a solo road trip turns into a nightmare when a hitchhiker asks to use the trunk. She opens it later and finds a body, but the police dismiss her. No threat, no crime, just a misunderstanding until she receives a photo taken of her sleeping from inside her car. These stories will leave you questioning who you can trust when the very people sworn to protect you look the other way. Let's begin. Story 1, The Basement That Shouldn't Exist. The house was too cheap. That should have been the first red flag. Elena stood on the porch of her new Victorian duplex, admiring the peeling paint and crooked iron railing with a kind of forced optimism. Rent was half what it should be for this part of town. She convinced herself it was a lucky break, the kind that doesn't come often for someone who'd just been laid off. The landlord had smiled too much. "Just don't worry about the basement," he'd said, keys jingling in his palm. "It's sealed, hasn't been used in decades, out of sight, out of mind." She hadn't thought about that basement for a full week, not until the sound started. It was faint at first, like shifting gravel deep beneath the hardwood floors. Then came the thudding, not regular like footsteps, irregular like something crawling, and stopping, listening. Elena brushed it off as bad plumbing or rats, until she realized the sound didn't follow the pipes. It followed her. She tried not to panic the first time it happened while she was asleep. A soft tap, tap, tap woke her at 2:47 a.m. Her clock blinked red in the dark. She held her breath and listened. The noise seemed to be directly beneath her bed. Not under the bed, beneath the floorboards. She crept out, phone flashlight in hand, and placed her ear to the wooden floor. Nothing. The next morning she emailed the landlord. He didn't reply. She called, straight to voicemail. She knocked on the neighbor's side of the duplex. No one answered, even though she could hear footsteps inside. That evening she pulled the living room rug back and noticed something strange. A square outline, just slightly off color from the rest of the floor, like a hidden hatch had once been there and was painted over. Her heart began to race. The next day she rented a stud finder and checked the entire ground floor. That's when she found it, an area of the hallway wall that was hollow. Not just a cavity, a whole vertical shaft, as if a door had been sealed over with drywall and paint. She started chipping, first with a screwdriver, then with a hammer, then a chisel. By midnight, she exposed the edges of an old wooden door, heavy iron hinges, rusted and embedded in stone. There was no handle, just a circular hole where one might have been. Her instincts screamed to stop. Instead, she pressed her ear against the door. She heard breathing. Elena didn't sleep. At 6:13 a.m., she drove straight to the local police department with photos on her phone and asked to file a report. The officer at the desk didn't even look up. "Ma'am, unless there's a break-in or someone is threatening you, there's not much we can do. Sounds like an old house settling. Happens all the time." "I heard breathing," she insisted. "There's something or someone down there." The officer sighed and handed her a non-emergency contact number. 2 nights later, she was jolted awake by a crash. Someone was pounding from behind the hidden door. She dialed 911, voice shaking. This time, they sent someone. The 2 officers arrived in casual uniforms, one tall and slouched, the other chewing gum and smirking like he was already bored. They scanned the wall, knocked it lightly. "Probably just vermin," one said. "You've got old insulation, probably rats running around." She gestured to the gouged-out hole, exposing the wooden door and its rusted iron hinges. The taller cop raised an eyebrow. "You opened your wall for this?" "There's a basement back there," she said. He said there wasn't, but there is. They exchanged a look. The gum chewer flicked his flashlight at the door. "No stairs visible," he muttered. "We're not going to crawl through here without a warrant. And honestly, there's nothing illegal about a sealed basement. Lot of houses have 'em. What if there's someone trapped down there?" He turned toward her. Then they'd be screaming. They weren't screaming, but they were knocking again. A slow, deliberate knock. Knock, knock. Both officers turned. The noise had returned, right behind the door. One cop stepped back instinctively, hand twitching toward his belt. The other leaned in and said, "Who's there?" Nothing. He pressed his ear to the door. Stillness. Then, wham! Something slammed against the other side, so loud it shook dust from the ceiling. The gum chewer fell backward. The other officer's eyes widened. "Okay, that was not a rat." He grabbed the radio on his shoulder. "We might need—" The radio fizzled. Dead. Both men looked around, suddenly alert. "Ma'am," said the tall one, "do you have access to the main circuit breaker?" Elena shook her head. "It's in the—" She stopped. She didn't know where it was. There wasn't one. Not visible, at least. Even her landlord never mentioned where the electrical panel was. One officer muttered, "This whole place is a fire trap." The other rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, we'll file a note, but this isn't a criminal case. Get your landlord to open it up if you're that concerned." She stared at them in disbelief. "You heard it." "Ma'am." The taller one sighed. "You think you heard something, but we don't have legal grounds. There's no probable cause." Then they were gone. Elena sat in the hallway for hours after they left, staring at the door. It knocked again at 3:11 a.m. and again at 3:32. And then it began to scratch. Long, dragging fingernails, slowly, rhythmically, up and down the wood. She didn't sleep. In the morning, she drove across town to the county archives. It took her 2 hours to convince a clerk to help her search the property records. What they found made her skin crawl. The duplex had originally been a single mansion built in 1907 by a man named Luther Emmerich, a mortician. The lower floor had once housed his embalming workshop. It had been condemned in 1948, but it had never been filled. There was no record of demolition, no permits for sealing, no proof that the basement was ever removed. Just a single handwritten note in red ink. "Do not reopen. 6 bodies never located." The red ink echoed in her mind like a curse. "Do not reopen. 6 bodies never located." Elena sat alone in her car outside the archives, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking lot, and yet she hadn't moved. Every part of her body told her to leave that house, to call someone, anyone, and get out. But she didn't. She couldn't. Because now it wasn't just about fear. It was about truth. Something was down there beneath her floor, and nobody would help. Not the landlord, not the cops, not even the city. They had all turned their backs, so she would go down herself. At midnight, she prepared. Thick flashlight, hammer, crowbar, a heavy-duty rope she found in the shed. She filled a backpack with a backup battery, a bottle of water, and a can of pepper spray. It felt laughable, but also like armor. She approached the hidden basement door like it was breathing. It looked older tonight, more cracked, as if it had been slowly exhaling beneath the drywall all these years. She jabbed the crowbar into the iron-lined frame. After minutes of grunting and leverage, something snapped, and the wood groaned open with a sound like bones grinding. A rush of cold air poured from the darkness. She almost gagged. The smell was thick, earth, rot, something wet and long forgotten. The beam of her flashlight shook as she peered inside. There were stairs, stone steps, slick with moisture, leading down into a black void. She descended. Each step echoed as though it didn't end at the stone. It echoed off something else, something deeper. The walls were carved rock, but covered in flaking layers of old wallpaper, like someone had tried to pretend this was still part of a home. After 12 steps, she reached the bottom. A narrow hallway stretched out before her, with several doors on either side, some ajar, some scratched, some sealed shut, with rusted bolts and chains. She approached the first door. Gently, she nudged it open. Inside was a child's bedroom, or what used to be one. A decaying crib sat in the corner, surrounded by dozens of eyeless dolls. The wallpaper here was cartoonish, faded pinks and blues, peeling in long strips. A mobile above the crib spun slowly, despite the air being still. Elena backed out quickly, pulse hammering in her ears. Room 2, an embalming table, rust-stained tiles. Dried blood on the floor, old glass bottles labeled with long-forgotten chemicals, and above it, a hook, swaying. Room 3. She didn't open. She didn't need to, because something was whispering behind it. Her flashlight flickered. That's when she heard it. Footsteps, not hers, software wet, behind her. She whipped around. Nothing. The beam caught only crumbling stone and damp wooden beams. But something had changed. The air was breathing, rhythmic, like lungs drawing in stale decades of dust and secrets. She moved faster now, pushing past each door. A rusted kitchen, a furnace room, a tunnel that led into pure black, its walls scratched like someone had tried to claw their way out. Then movement, just ahead. A figure, slouched, pale, crawling. Elena froze. It turned toward her with jerky, twitching motion, as if unfamiliar with its own limbs. Its face was sunken, stretched like paper over bone. One eye socket was hollow. The other watched. Then it spoke. Not aloud, but in a gurgling whisper inside her mind. You shouldn't have opened it. She screamed and turned to run, but her foot caught on something. She went down hard, flashlight clattering away. That's when she saw what tripped her. A jawbone, human, still wet. She scrambled to her feet and ran. The walls seemed to close in around her, doors slamming as she passed. Whispers erupted from every crack in the stone. Voices cried out. Some begged, some laughed. And then she saw light. Not her flashlight. Something ahead. A room filled with a soft amber glow. She should have turned back, but she needed out. Needed to understand. She stepped inside. The room was circular, lined with shelves made of human bones. Skulls stared at her from every angle, some shattered, some still wet. In the center was a pit. At its edge a journal sat open, blood-soaked, but legible. She read the last entry, shaking. The bodies rot, but the souls linger. I sealed it to stop the screaming. The police wouldn't help. They knew. They always knew. If you're reading this, get out, before they crawl back into the light. Suddenly the whispering stopped. Too quiet. Then the scraping began. It came from the pit. A wet, slithering movement. Elena backed away, but the door behind her had vanished. The walls pulsed. Then it rose. A figure, larger than human. Its body was a patchwork of limbs, stitched crudely with rusted wire. Multiple heads, some fused, some hanging loosely, twitched with spasms. Its eyes burned with a dim, yellow hunger. It smiled, and behind it, in the pit, were the other 5. The missing bodies. Still moving, still alive. Or, not alive, not anymore. Elena ran blindly through the walls, screaming for help, for anyone. She found the stairs and scrambled upward. The sound of dragging limbs followed her. The breath of something old, something forgotten, on the back of her neck. She burst into her hallway, slamming the hidden door shut behind her. Silence. The knocking didn't come back. She sealed the wall herself, hammered the boards in, layered it with concrete, painted over it until not even she could see the outline. Then she moved out. Never spoke of it again, but she kept the journal. Weeks later, she returned to the police station, this time to give them everything. The evidence, the footage, the journal, a full report. The desk officer skimmed the first page, then handed it back. "This again?" he said flatly. "You really think you're the first one to find that place?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" The officer smiled, and this time she noticed something horrifying. His name tag read Emmerich, and just before she turned to leave, he leaned in and whispered, "Told you not to open it." Story 2. My ex's new face. The last thing Rachel expected was for him to find her again. She'd done everything right. New number, new address, new job, even a new haircut. After 2 years of manipulation, threats, and a court battle that ended with a restraining order, she was finally free. She moved 3 states away, a fresh start, a quiet life, but you can't outrun a ghost, especially not one with a familiar face. It began in the grocery store, a glimpse, a blur. She dropped a jar of pasta sauce when she saw him, standing at the end of aisle 7, just standing, still as a statue, same posture, same clothes he used to wear, but his face was wrong, not deformed, not injured, just off, too smooth, like it didn't belong to him, like it was wearing him, not the other way around. She blinked, and he was gone. Rachel chalked it up to trauma. Flashbacks. Her therapist warned her about them, that sometimes the mind plays tricks after prolonged abuse. She tried to believe that, until he started showing up again, always just out of reach, across the street from her office, at the bus stop near her apartment, in the window reflection at the laundromat, never approaching, just watching. Every time, she saw the same wrongness in his face, like it was made of someone else's skin, like the bones beneath had been rearranged. She went to the police. Again, they looked up the restraining order, nodded sympathetically, and said the same old line. "He hasn't done anything yet. Just call if he threatens you." They didn't get it. He didn't need to threaten her. He was the threat. It escalated with the vent. Rachel had always hated the bedroom vent in her new apartment. It was old, metallic, and large, wider than her shoulders. It made noises at night. But one night, the noise wasn't mechanical. It was breathing. She froze in bed, lights off, eyes adjusting to the dark. And then she saw them, two eyes, staring through the slats, watching. She screamed. When maintenance came the next day, they said no one could fit inside. "It's an old duct system," the guy muttered. "Nothing back there but dead air and rust." But Rachel knew what she saw. Then the packages began to arrive. No return address, just her name. Inside the first, a Polaroid, a blurry photo of her walking home from work. She hadn't noticed anyone following her. Inside the second, a lock of hair, tied with a red string. Blonde, not hers. Inside the third, a disposable phone. It rang once an hour, every hour, no matter how often she turned it off. She brought them to the police. They shrugged. "No fingerprints, no threats. Nothing we can act on." Rachel snapped. "Are you waiting for me to show up dead before you'll care?" The officer offered a tight smile. "We understand your fear, but unless he enters your property or physically harms you, we're limited." Rachel stopped sleeping. She moved her dresser in front of the bedroom vent. She installed a camera facing her front door. She adopted a rescue dog, a mutt named Willow that barked at every creak and shadow. Still, the fear crept in like mold. It wasn't just paranoia, it was presence. She felt him, like he was in the walls, breathing with her, counting her steps. She stopped leaving home at night, stopped answering unknown numbers. She closed all her blinds. But sometimes, when she turned off the TV, she swore she could hear someone whispering her name from behind the drywall. It all broke the night she found the mirror. She had stepped into the bathroom around 2 a.m., feeling like her skin was crawling. She looked into the mirror and froze. The reflection behind her didn't match the room. In the mirror, the closet door behind her was open. She turned around. In reality, it was shut. She looked back at the mirror. Now he was standing there, in the reflection only, close, so close, right behind her, grinning, a wide, horrible, unnatural grin that stretched too far across his borrowed face. She spun around. Nothing there. When she looked back again, the mirror was cracked. A single note had been slid under the bathroom door. In crude, jagged handwriting, it read, "This one fits better." Rachel packed a bag that night. She drove straight to the police station, phone in hand, shaking, voice on the edge of breaking. She begged them to search her apartment, told them someone had been inside, that she had proof, that her stalker wasn't normal. They asked for footage. The camera by her front door had been disabled, the SD card removed. The officer sighed. "Ma'am, I believe you're scared, but there's no evidence of a break-in. Your door locks haven't been tampered with. There's nothing here that gives us reason to enter your residence." She wanted to scream, to cry, but she didn't. She went home. Alone. That night, Rachel didn't sleep. She sat on the couch, kitchen knife in her lap, Willow growling low at the hallway. The vent was uncovered again. The dresser had been moved. Not dragged, lifted, silently, set aside, with care. The slats of the vent were now loose, and something inside shifted. She raised her phone to take a picture, but the app crashed, the lights flickered, and in that moment, from inside the vent, she heard a voice. Not his, not hers, but someone else's, muffled, wet, terrified. "Please help me. He's wearing my face." Rachel couldn't move. The voice from the vent was so faint, so broken, she might have thought she imagined it. Except Willow, her dog, was growling like she'd never heard before. Low, guttural, hackles raised, eyes locked on the metal slats as if something was already pushing through. Rachel dropped the phone. The camera app crashed again. She backed away slowly, knife trembling in her hand. "Who's there?" she asked. Her voice cracked. "Who are you?" Silence. Then, another whisper, rasping through a mouth that didn't quite work. "He Has the others. Willow barked, a loud, frantic warning, and then the whispering stopped. She didn't sleep, didn't blink. The vent stayed quiet for the rest of the night. But Rachel couldn't shake what she heard. The others. Others. She waited until morning and then made a decision. She was done, waiting for someone else to save her. The police wouldn't act. No one believed her. She was going to figure out who was in her walls and what they wanted. She began with the maintenance guy. She found his number on the leasing paperwork, called him directly. When he answered, she asked one question. Who had the apartment before me? There was a pause, then a nervous chuckle. I don't really know, ma'am. Management changes a lot. It was empty for a few months before you moved in, though. What about before that? He hesitated. Look, there's rumors. Tenant went missing, just vanished. Cops looked into it. No signs of foul play. Dropped the case. Did they check the vents? She asked. Silence. Hello? The line clicked. He hung up. Rachel searched online for hours, digging through old local articles, archived neighborhood posts, anything that might hint at who lived in apartment 3C before her. Finally, she found it. A missing persons forum, a post from a woman named Carla, dated 11 months ago. My sister, Denise, disappeared from her apartment. No forced entry, no signs of struggle. Police stopped investigating after 2 weeks. I know she wouldn't leave without saying goodbye. Please, if you live in or near the Avalon Heights complex, check your vents. She used to say someone was watching her. Rachel's skin prickled. She messaged Carla immediately. They met the next afternoon at a cafe 2 blocks away. Carla looked exhausted, gaunt. Her hands shook as she sipped her coffee. She kept saying she saw someone in the walls. Carla whispered that someone was mimicking her neighbors, like they were wearing masks made of skin. Rachel felt her stomach churn. I've seen him too, my ex, but wrong, like his face doesn't belong to him. Carla nodded slowly. Denise said the same, and before she vanished, she left me a voicemail, saying she thought he was trying on new faces. They sat in silence. Then Carla asked, "Has he come inside yet?" Rachel swallowed. Not officially. Carla handed her a flash drive. Denise had cameras. She mailed this to me the day before she disappeared. I never opened it. Rachel plugged the flash drive into her laptop as soon as she got home. There were 7 video clips, all silent. Grainy night vision footage from Denise's old apartment. Clip 1, Denise brushing her teeth. Normal. Clip 2, Denise asleep. Something moves behind the vent. Clip 3, Denise in the kitchen, a shadow in the hallway. Clip 4, Denise pointing a knife at the vent. Clip 5, Denise screaming, silently, into the camera, holding a piece of human skin in her hand like a mask. Clip 6, Denise asleep again. A figure crawls out of the wall, thin, inhumanly thin, wearing her face like a rubber mask, stretched and sagging. It stands over her, watching. Clip 7, the bed is empty. The camera glitches. The video ends. Rachel slammed the laptop shut. She ran to the kitchen and grabbed a screwdriver. Sobbing, shaking, she unscrewed the vent cover in her bedroom. Willow barked behind her, pacing in circles. She pulled the metal slats free, and a foul, rotting stench poured out. She coughed, covering her mouth. A thin draft blew warm air across her face. She aimed her flashlight into the duct. It went deeper than it should. A tunnel of metal and darkness. Scratch marks lined the interior. Tufts of hair stuck to the corners. Fabric, a shoe, and then a trail, dried blood. She crawled inside. The passage was tight, but not impossible. It twisted behind the walls, past pipes and insulation, deeper than any vent should go. She followed the dried blood, trying not to think about what she was inhaling. After 10 minutes, she came to a break in the ductwork, a hole cut crudely into the wall itself. She climbed through and found herself in a hidden room. It was small, cold, covered in newspaper clippings and Polaroids of her, from weeks ago, months ago, sleeping, showering, cooking, Polaroids of other women too, all labeled, some crossed out in red ink. There was a mattress on the floor, stained and torn. Beside it, a pile of something wrapped in trash bags and duct tape. She tore one open. Inside was a human face, flayed, hollowed, preserved in plastic. Another bag held arms, fingers, scalps. A third held Denise's ID. Rachel stumbled backward and screamed. Something stirred behind her. She turned. He was there, crawling from the darkness like a spider, wearing a new face. This one was smiling. It was her face, the one from the Polaroids. He'd replicated her, every feature, the hair, the mouth, the cheekbones, but the eyes were all wrong. "Why won't you love me?" he asked in a high, broken voice. "You said we'd always be together." Rachel raised the knife, but he was too fast. He lunged. When she woke, she was tied to the mattress, the room spinning. Her own face stared back at her from the wall, flayed, empty. He crouched beside her, cooing softly. "I made us a new home. You won't run this time." She screamed, thrashed, begged. He leaned close and whispered, "They never help. They never believe. You're mine now." The next day, the police received an anonymous tip. They checked Rachel's apartment. No signs of a struggle, no break-in, no Rachel, just a folded note on her bed. One sentence written in her handwriting. "It's not me." Story 3. The Man in the Trunk. It was supposed to be a casual drive across the state, a solo road trip to clear my head after graduating college. I packed my little hatchback with snacks, a playlist of true crime podcasts, and zero expectations. The only rule I had, no hitchhikers. But when I saw him, standing by the roadside at dusk, backpack slung over one shoulder, thumb extended, I stopped. I can't explain why. Maybe it was the way he looked at me. He wasn't threatening, just tired, worn down by something deeper than the road. Something that made him seem human in a way I couldn't ignore. He knocked on the passenger window. I cracked it an inch. "You headed west?" he asked, voice quiet. I nodded. "Mind if I ride with you to Ash Hollow? It's just an hour out." Something about the way he said "ride with you" gave me pause. But I said yes. He introduced himself as Mark. He didn't talk much, just stared out the window as the sun dipped low and the road stretched into the emptiness of rural night. He didn't ask me questions, didn't smile. And yet, I didn't feel unsafe. Not yet, until he asked me to open the trunk. It was about 40 minutes into the drive. We had stopped at a gas station off a dark county road. I was stretching my legs and grabbing a water bottle when Mark appeared beside me. "I have something I need to stash," he said. "It's in my pack, heavy. Don't want it in the back seat. Mind popping the trunk?" I hesitated. "What is it?" He stared at me. No emotion, no shift in tone. "Just some old tools." I nodded, pressed the trunk button. He carefully lifted his backpack and placed it inside, but not like someone tossing in luggage. No, he positioned it, as if whatever was inside had a preferred way to sit. Then he slammed the trunk and smiled for the first time. It didn't reach his eyes. Back on the road, something shifted. The silence between us was no longer peaceful. It was electric, pressurized. He began asking strange questions. "You ever open your trunk while driving? Think you'd notice if something crawled in there during the night? Ever wonder what people hide in there for years?" I laughed nervously. "You're a true crime fan, too, huh?" He turned slowly toward me. I like collecting. The air got cold. I cracked a window and asked him jokingly, "What kind of tools you got back there, anyway?" Mark smiled again. "Ones that don't make a sound." That's when I saw it. His shoes. They weren't his size. Way too small. They looked like women's shoes. Pale blue canvas sneakers with little white flowers, like the kind my roommate Claire used to wear before she went missing. My heart thudded once, hard. "Hey," I said casually. "I think I missed the turn for Ash Hollow." He didn't respond. "Do you have the address?" Mark just stared ahead. "Keep driving." We were in the middle of nowhere now. Just dark trees and cracked asphalt, and a night that had forgotten the moon. I pulled into a dim rest stop, under the guise of needing the bathroom. As soon as I stepped out of the car, I walked straight to the trunk. I needed to see what was in that pack. I popped it open slowly, flashlight ready. The backpack sat like a corpse in a body bag. I unzipped it. Inside, black garbage bags, duct tape, a heavy tarp, and beneath that, I stopped breathing. Blonde hair, flesh, a hand, small, cold. I staggered back, almost dropping my phone. I took photos, all of it. I dialed 911, but there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. Slow, crunching gravel. I turned, and Mark was standing there. Not angry, not surprised, just smiling. "I told you not to open it." I ran, around the rest stop building, through the picnic area. I didn't even try to fight. I just needed distance. I hid behind a trash bin, phone in hand, praying for a single bar of service. Nothing. The footsteps stopped. Then I heard the car door slam, then the engine, then silence. When I returned, he was gone. So was the backpack, so was the body, but he'd left something for me. On the dashboard, a Polaroid. Me, asleep in my car. Taken from the back seat, I drove to the nearest sheriff's station. It took 45 minutes. I told them everything. Showed them the photo, the GPS location of the rest stop, even the shoe detail. They said the image wasn't proof of anything. They searched the rest stop. Nothing there, no blood, no bag, no mark. They pulled footage from the gas station. The cameras were broken. They didn't even file a report. "He didn't threaten you," the deputy said, sipping his coffee. "There's no evidence he harmed anyone. Could have been a prank." "A prank? There was a body." He shrugged. "Well, you didn't bring the body, so." I didn't sleep that night, or the next. 3 days later, a manila envelope showed up at my door. No return address. Inside, more Polaroids, more women, different women, all in trunks, all duct-taped, wide-eyed, alive. One of them was Claire. She was looking directly into the camera. Behind her, written on the inside of the trunk in lipstick, "Still think the cops will help." The envelope slipped from my hands. I sat, in stunned silence, staring at the pile of Polaroids on my lap, photo after photo of duct-taped mouths, terrified eyes, bruised wrists. The images were grainy but real, visceral, and unmistakably horrifying. One of them was Claire, my missing roommate, hair matted, lips cracked, her wrists bound in red zip ties. But it was the trunk that chilled me most, the little message she'd scrawled on the inside wall with lipstick. "Still think the cops will help?" I called them anyway, not because I thought it would work, but because it felt like the right thing to do. I needed someone to see what I had. I drove the photos down to the station, trembling with adrenaline, half hoping they'd take one look and launch a full investigation. Instead, they took them, glanced at a few, and gave each other that look people give when they've already decided you're crazy. An officer with a coffee stain on his tie leaned forward. "There's no way to verify when or where these photos were taken," he said calmly. "You could have pulled these off a horror blog. I told you, I snapped. I took a man with a body in his trunk to a rest stop. His name was Mark. The bag was in my car. The officer nodded slowly. Do you have the bag now? Number he took it. Any photos of the bag with the body? No, but then it's your word against nobody's. They filed the photos, told me they'd keep an eye out. I walked out, shaking. They weren't going to help. Mark knew that. That's why he sent the photos in the first place. That night, I stayed awake, curtains drawn, lights off. Every sound from outside made my heart stutter. Every car engine, every passing footstep, every gust of wind. Then around 3 a.m. I heard a car engine idle and stop, right outside my apartment. I tiptoed to the peephole, a silver sedan, lights off, driver still behind the wheel. I couldn't see his face. Then something slid through the crack in my door, a piece of paper. I waited a full hour before picking it up, written in ink that was slightly smudged from dew. You forgot to check your trunk. I ran outside barefoot, heart galloping, hands fumbling with my car keys. I popped the hatchback, empty, at first. Then I saw it. Wedged between the carpet lining and the spare tire panel was a small velvet pouch. I opened it. Inside was a single tooth, a human molar, caked with blood. I dropped it. I didn't call the police this time. Instead, I called Carla, the woman whose sister, Denise, had gone missing. I told her everything, including the new photos. She wasn't surprised. He did the same to me, she said. Sent photos, notes, little pieces. They want you to know, but not enough to prove it. What did you do? Started looking where the cops wouldn't. She gave me the name of a private investigator, a man who used to be law enforcement but left after too many cases were swept under the rug. I contacted him the next morning. The PI's name was Denton, ex-homicide, now working from a cluttered basement that smelled like gun oil and black coffee. He didn't ask me to justify what I saw. He just said, "Tell me everything." When I finished, he nodded slowly. You said he called himself Mark? Yeah, there's been cases across the Midwest, dating back over a decade. No clear pattern, no consistent MO. Sometimes women vanish after picking up a hitchhiker. Other times, they're found in trunks halfway across the country. No IDs, no fingerprints, just dead eyes. Why doesn't anyone know about this? He lit a cigarette. Because it doesn't exist on paper. The bodies are scattered. Local cops don't talk to each other. No one connects the dots. He pulled out a file and slid it across the table. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Faces stitched with horror. Women and men alike, all found in trunks, some still alive, some not. At the bottom of the stack was a sketch. A man, plain face, forgettable features, short hair, neutral expression, labeled only the borrower. He's not always Mark, Denton said. He changes names. Faces, too, we think. The name comes from survivors, people who claimed the man was trying to become them, collecting their behaviors, voices, skin, clothes. That's not possible, I whispered. Number but neither is disappearing off a highway in daylight without a trace. Yet here we are. He handed me a burner phone. If he contacts you again, call me first, not the police. I didn't ask why. I already knew. That weekend, I went back to the rest stop, the one where Mark disappeared. I parked in the exact spot, waited until dusk, and then I saw it, a white ribbon tied to a tree. I followed it. 50 yards into the woods, behind a pile of rotted leaves and moss-covered rocks, I found the rusted shell of a car. Its trunk was slightly ajar. Inside, bones. Not clean, not stripped, still partially covered in the decaying remnants of clothing and flesh. A handbag rested beside the body. Inside, a faded driver's license. Claire. Denton contacted a federal agent he trusted. They opened the trunk, catalogued the bones. Still, no media coverage, No public report, no alert, just silence, and the knowledge that the monster was still out there. 2 days later, I received a voicemail. No number, just static. Then, I took the wrong face last time. But yours fits perfect. The next morning, I looked outside. Someone had scratched 3 letters into the hood of my car. Y-O-U. I moved. Again. Different state. New car. Changed my name. But I never stopped checking the trunk. Every night and every morning. Because one day, I know he'll be back. And when he is, the police still won't help. No one's looking, and he knows it. You've just heard 3 disturbing true stories, where the horror wasn't just what happened, but how utterly powerless the victims were when they begged for help and got nothing in return. A woman finds a hidden basement filled with the remains of the forgotten, sealed away by a landlord with a sinister past. A stalker wears the faces of his victims one by one, while police insist there's no real threat, and a hitchhiker hides his collection in plain sight, knowing full well the system won't even lift a finger. These aren't just stories about fear. They're about silence, neglect, and the terrifying truth that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the monster outside your door. It's realizing no one's coming to stop it. If you found these stories as chilling as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We release new real horror stories every week that dig deep into the darkness most people pretend isn't there. And let us know in the comments, have you ever had an experience where you called for help and no one came? Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and remember, not every nightmare gets a rescue.